Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe back with a little bit more HAWKEN. This is a match in the Berserker, which was probably one of the first mechs I started to have fun with when I originally played this game. It's aesthetically okay. By that, I mean that when I did first find HAWKEN, I had a really tough time getting into the game just because the mechs look really weird. Now, it's not that they're poorly made, they're well made. It's just that the conceptualization behind them is kind of odd. I get what they were going for, but I was kind of turned off by the whole CRT mech. And I think, if I'm to be brutally honest, which I always am, I think that mech scared away quite a few individuals, because I tend to ask people, you know, what do you like about HAWKEN? What don't you like? Why don't you play it anymore? And I'm like, well, I just couldn't get into the mechs. I didn't really like the way they looked, you know, the whole CRT thing. I didn't feel like running around in a television set. You know, it's just, I don't know. Some people find it kind of, you know, quirky or cute, I suppose, but it just didn't really ever work for me. Now, you can of course elite these mechs and get different body parts for them and change them up a little bit. So you can go from a television set to a hockey puck of sorts, but you can also just buy other body parts as well and completely change the look outside of its original chassis. So with that, there are a few ways to save yourself in the aesthetics department, but it'll either cost you time or money, of course. But this match was quite hectic indeed, very close quarters, lots of bottlenecks, and as a light pilot here, I tend to just try to keep moving, constantly side-strafing when I can, just to avoid incoming fire, and just firing as much as I possibly can without overheating. I probably need to work on some of the equipment for this mech, or the modules. I'm not actually sure what they're called in this game. Been playing too much MechWarrior Online, of course. Speaking of, I'm often asked what the difference is between the two for those individuals that have never played either game and they're curious about which one to get into. Really, I think it's just going to come down to pacing. The gameplay modes are quite different as well. This game has respawning. MechWarrior currently does not. MechWarrior is also a very slow-paced, tactical game. The mechs are much larger, a lot taller than buildings and many structures. They can be several stories tall, whereas the mechs in HAWKEN aren't necessarily that large, but as you can see, just the pacing here is absolutely ridiculous. I suppose in many respects this game takes after anime-styled mecha, other than the design, of course, but really just with the movement. If you've ever played Armored Core and you zip along in that game where you can strafe left and right and through the air, and just the pacing of it reminds me a lot of an Armored Core game, but with a different design and aesthetic. As far as which game is more fun, it's just personal preference. I tend to play MechWarrior more, mostly because of the pacing, a lot more tactical, slower pace, using cover mechanics and things like that. Whereas in this game, it's just totally a twitch fest, more akin to old school deathmatch titles. But, you know, really, again, free-to-plays, links in the description below if you want to check either of them out. I think you can't go wrong. This game, I will admit, I feel is far more polished than MechWarrior Online. I think it has better game modes. I think aesthetically it's far more pleasing, other than the design of the mechs. But when it comes to MechWarrior, I just can't escape the fact that I appreciate the gameplay and the customization a bit more. So really, two different animals within a mech genre, but I think that you could play them both from time to time and enjoy them for different reasons, as I do. However, I might have to advise against spending too much money on this game. We're just not sure what the future holds for this title. Many developers have left the staff, and on top of that, they just haven't communicated anything with us in quite some time. Now, I will criticize that heavily. It is 2014, and most developers should know by now that silence is suicide. you have to let people know what's going on. You can't just keep your mouth shut. There's not much competition in the mech genre. You have MechWarrior Online, and that's mostly it on PC, with maybe a few minor exceptions. So there's not much that you have to hide. You have two completely different games. I'm pretty sure that MWO isn't going to follow in your footsteps. Part of me feels like this game was some rich person's hobby, or perhaps a way to move into a live-action series, or maybe even a toy line, and since that's backfired, it's just remained stagnant. Anyways, as I've said before, it's really sad just because it's a good game. The other downside, of course, would be the fact that so few people play it that the only people you have left are the veterans, and some of them are kind of on the elitist side and aren't necessarily newbie friendly, so it doesn't necessarily help that you have these guys pushing away new players. So I would recommend that if any of you are watching this game and you're into this game and you're good at this game, then it's best that you help out new players instead of scaring them away, because otherwise this game might not exist and you won't have anybody to push around. Back to the game at hand, of course, just an intense firefight throughout this whole match. I'm impressed by the amount of lead you can continue to throw downrange. Always just a blast, especially when you're coming from other games. You just kind of need this quick fix of adrenaline. But I do also prefer ballistic weapons in games. In MechWarrior Online, obviously I use lasers a lot to great success, but it's just not as satisfying. You know, just a straight laser beam with a strange sound. It's nice to be able to pull a trigger on a ballistic weapon. Just something about the intensity, the shells ejecting and tracer fire. I don't know, it's just intense. Beyond that, though, part of me would love to see, and I say this about every game that I play, I would love to see a no respawn mode in here. I know most of you are probably flipping out right now, like, what the, no, that's horrible, this is not that kind of game. And it's like, I know, calm down, relax, shh, we all have opinions, welcome to Earth. I'm just saying, as a separate mode for crazy people like me, it would be interesting to see how it changes the gameplay, because it usually does to a greater degree, and I think it would be kind of fun. Even with this fast pace, I think it would be kind of interesting. I know some of you are thinking, well, it might induce too much camping, and I'm like, nah, as long as you have the right kind of map and game modes that force your team to move towards an objective, you're fine. And that way, if the other team thinks that camping is a good idea, then they're just going to lose. But, I mean, there's plenty of the game modes here that would work with it. It would just be completely crazy, because you would have to be such an elite player. Now, you'd still be able to repair your mech and, you know, hang back and get fixed up. There's obviously the engineer mech and everything like that, too. You'd still be able to do that, but if you die, you're out, and that would be the end of the game unless somebody wins via the objective. I think it would be kind of cool as a separate mode. I don't know how many people would play it, probably not many, and considering how small the player base is for this game already, probably not very many, but I don't think it would require too much programming, and it's something else that they could at least throw at the game, considering how small their development team seems to be. Also worth mentioning, if you enjoy the HAWKEN soundtrack, the music that plays throughout the main menus and sometimes during a match or perhaps at the end of the rounds, you will be delighted to know that you can actually get the soundtrack for $5. I'll have a link in the description below. There's about 19 tracks, and some of them are short 10-second clips for victories and things like that, but generally there's a lot of good pieces there, and $5 is kind of a deal for that much content at high qualities. You can even download in FLAC, which is great for us audiophiles. But beyond that, it is able to be previewed in case you're worried about spending money on rubbish. So you can go to the website and play each of the tracks before you purchase. But I think it's well worth it. And I'm, of course, pretty picky about the music I listen to. I've always enjoyed the score within HAWKEN. Just sitting in the main menu even. Sometimes you don't want to play because you just want to keep listening to the music and watching the flyby cameras look at your mech. As this match comes to a close, I have to admit this was a pretty good game for me in the Berserker. I don't usually do this well with it. Some of you are probably watching this and like, What are you talking about? I thought this was a how not to play video. You were terrible. Shut your pie hole. I come in second place. Notice how I just created an argument with myself, not knowing what any of you were thinking. But anyways, let's see. 1, 2, 3 mechs, 4 mechs, 5. There I am. My little Berserker. I don't have a fancy digital chicken, but I can bow. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that you've enjoyed this look at HAWKEN and the commentary within. Please don't forget to take a look at the links in the description below. And with that, I'll see you on the next one.